I was gonna see, Chase, I'll have your intro recorded. Um, but can you just kind of start with your origin and talk about, where you're from, what you were into as a kid, those kinds of things?
Yeah, so it's funny to hear you say origin because early on my father was in the military. So I was born in Texas. My brother was born in North Carolina. So we've kind of been all over the place. But like when you ask where I'm from, I tell everyone Connorsville. Small group of us from Connorsville, but that's where I'm from, little old town in little old Indiana. But as a kid, probably should have saw things coming from what I was into as a kid, because there's a little bit of everything. Any and all things outside sports, athletics. And I guess one of the things I was into was trouble. It probably led to a lot of highs and lows throughout my childhood. But I was just a curious kid. I was always wondering how things worked, which got me into some trouble, taking apart computers in the house and whatnot. And I mean, I was quite the little entrepreneur, to be quite honest. Whether it was my grandma lived in the middle of like the notorious Fifth Street Hill in Connorsville, which I think everyone knows that has ever been there, knows that hill. And I would set up like a stand in the middle of it, which in hindsight was quite disastrous. People crashed on that hill without stopping to see what I was doing. So,
Oh yeah.
I mean, who knows? Maybe it was like the best ad space and possibly the least safe ad space. But I would set up tables to sell Hot Wheel cars, suckers. I mean, anything and everything I could buy with a couple of dollars I had, and try to make a couple of dollars more. And I actually recently learned about something that kind of made me proud as a child entrepreneur. My mom's friend told me that I used to come up to her house when I knew she was going to have a garage sale. And when she was finished, I would ask if I could sell what was left. And basically, I would go through and pull all her stickers off, and I would double the price so that I had like a higher starting point. And then I would like package deals and sell everything that she couldn't sell, give her what she wanted out of it. And I would leave with money for just showing up to her house for a couple hours. So yeah, I would say I was a very curious kid from Connorsville.
Love it. Sales and entrepreneurship at an early age.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse.
I understand that. Yeah, we grew up on the same side of town. I know that house well. I think it's yellow.
Yep,
Yeah.
still yellow. I tell you, it's still standing. That thing's been there for a long time.
I've also seen at least two car wrecks there personally. So I know exactly what you're talking about there too.
Yeah, I've probably logged hundreds of those and a couple of tanker semis that got stuck, and we would have to evacuate the house and whatnot. So quite the interesting place to be.
Absolutely. Good location for sales. Um, Chase, what are you all into now? I guess outside of work.
Well, I mean, outside of my day job, obviously a new dad. So I love spending time with, my wife, Stephanie, and my daughter, Andy. Really anything and everything is kind of sweeter with her. Just like, no matter what it is, the smallest things that you do and don't necessarily notice before you have a kid, you get, plants that she reaches out and grabs. Like everything's just sweeter, to be completely honest, at least for me. And outside of being a new dad, I play as much golf as I can. And generally I'm kind of, obsessed with learning anything and everything. So, always trying to find something to do on the side, which has led me to a lot of, wins, and has led me to a lot of dead ends. So yeah, I mean, being a dad, doing a little bit of everything, adventuring with my wife and daughter, playing golf, and just dabbling here and there and whatever opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. Love it. Well, speaking of opportunities, I was hoping we could, before we go through your entire career journey, I was hoping we could start with where you're at now. I know it's a fairly new role, but Would you mind just talking about the company and then talking about your role with the company as well?
Yeah, so I work for a company called Physicians Weekly. Physicians Weekly is a medical news publisher, we'll say a distributor of information. They have been for a long time, probably nearly 40 years, and they reach various specialties of healthcare providers, and they do so at the point of care. And in recent years, they've also added digital access. And their bread and butter has been a wallboard in physician-only congregating areas in clinics and in hospitals throughout the country. And it's an incredibly valuable piece of advertising opportunity and information to providers. Now, the bulk of their business has been in pharmaceutical advertising. Obviously, pharma, advertising directly to healthcare providers can increase prescriptions and generally just find good reach to people who write their products. I've been brought in to kind of branch into non-pharmaceutical healthcare verticals. So you think of anything from like teledoc and telemedicine to new age prescription, digital therapeutics, a company that I am hopefully helping get an HCP campaign together, just received FDA approval for a video game that basically addresses like ADHD. So, I think the future of healthcare is technology, and those technology organizations that are trying to change healthcare and change it in many ways, they need to reach the provider, and we're helping them do that. And I'm going to help them do that in whatever capacity they need, really. I think a lot of companies have historically spent the bulk of their money on a field sales force to reach providers, and I think that's a way of the past. A lot of people aren't going to like to hear that, but especially since that was my old job, but I think it's true. And so, yeah, we provide access to information to healthcare providers at the right places at the right times.
Yeah. What, who are you calling on in that kind of role? Are you calling on the companies that will advertise, or are you calling on practices that will have your platform in their office, or both?
So we have a team out of Fort Dodge that is calling on practices, building out the networks. Me specifically, I'm calling on all non-pharma healthcare organizations that could see value from reaching the healthcare provider. I'm kind of using it. It's kind of my vehicle for a personal brand development, really. Selfishly, I'm using it as a way to build my network. And I'm doing so because it's directly going to benefit Physicians Weekly. I have a passion for how healthcare will be changed via technology. And I want to help some of those companies do so and get their brand message out there. And I'm sorry, my daughter, I think, is trying to poop in the background. And any prospective parents need to understand that is your life. It just completely interrupted my change of thought. But
I get it.
Yeah, I'm calling on healthcare technology companies and, the CMOs, brand managers, and really just trying to become a trusted advisor to them. I think that's one of the most important pieces of sales, is just understanding their business, understanding how they plan to grow the business. And if I can provide value through Physicians Weekly, then so be it. That's revenue for my company. But outside of that, I just genuinely hope to be valuable to them, whether we do business together or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cool business model. And I totally agree with what you said about technology. I think it can be applied to pretty much any corner of healthcare or biotech or anything. And it is. I know when I was a contractor at a pharmaceutical company in Indy, which kind of narrows it down. But they had a whole, they had a giant department that was, for example, solely dedicated to mobile apps and diabetes.
Yeah.
So like that's just one example of many that I think it could be applied to, name the condition, name the vertical. So
absolutely. There's so many problems arising in healthcare, whether it be too few number of providers, in our drastically growing population,
Mhm.
monotonous task burnout. I think there's several things that kind of plague the space, and I believe there's a call on innovative minds to fix it and to repair a long deteriorating patient provider relationship. I think that obviously there's a lot to fix in healthcare, be it financials from an insurance and health system standpoint, or just generally the patient experience. There's a lot to fix, and I think technology is going to be what does it. People are going to be the root of it, but the technology is going to facilitate the change for sure.
Sure. From there, I was hoping we could talk about your career that led to where you are now. Maybe start like with that first business post grad, if you don't mind, and just kind of like walk us through how you got to here.
Yeah, man. So I don't know for the listeners if it's going to relate with the majority of the people or not, but it's kind of sporadic. So I think if I had to think of where it began, I would definitely say, leading up to me finding Blueprint supplements, which happened, in school. Obviously, fitness has always been a huge aspect of my life, and supplementation is a piece of that, especially for young kids who don't understand that supplementation isn't imperative. And I was doing some research maybe my sophomore year in school on various pre-workout supplements. And I noticed that while I knew a lot about them, there were things inside them that I had no idea what they were. And to come to find out, a lot of them is just like flavor additives, like shelf life extenders, things to keep it from clumping, various aspects of that. But the big thing was, proprietary blends. Proprietary blends used to be a huge aspect of supplementation, which is basically a bunch of ingredients combined into one quote proprietary blend so that the general consumer didn't know how much of each thing they were getting. Typically, the first one is what you're receiving the most of, which a lot of times was caffeine. And then it would kind of, scale down. And I saw it as an opportunity to originally just make my own. I'm like, I can cut out this stuff that doesn't mean anything that, at the time I was having to pay for. I could also probably make this a little cheaper. And so I started doing that. And, it kind of corresponded with the, I guess, influence you could say on campus I had in the fitness space that led people to be curious what I was doing. Long story short, I ran into a guy, a friend, we had seen each other at casino a couple of times. I guess that was in the future, really. And kind of just saw an opportunity to see what we could do in terms of finding somewhere where we could make this kind of a bigger thing and mass produce it. And, at the time, it was just a pre-workout. There was not even a business name. It was just a powered pre-workout. It was like performance optimization with extensive research.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing something. I remember sitting at my desk, like trying to identify how I could, let the first 100 people to try this product feel valuable. And my wife chimed in and was like, well, why don't you call them your Blueprint customers? And I'm like, bing, Blueprint just kind of rang a bell. And honestly, from there, we ran with it. And, it became, it became a name that everyone in the area knew. And, to kind of, I guess, not get sidetracked and continue on to what the question was, amidst that, I built up, an even more significant following in the fitness space, with a lot of people just seeking advice. And I took on a couple of clients for like some digital training. And what I had found where I enjoyed it the most, where I was able to help the most, was kind of in higher income lawyers who had like very intense lifestyles and very intense like nutritional lifestyle. They're, for lack of a better word, like they're whacked out because they work so much. And a lot of, at a certain income point, they're very, very successful. And so they understand the discipline needed to like make something happen once they have a plan. And I found that those individuals had 100% success whenever I worked with them. So I built out a basically a digital, we'll say like lifestyle consultancy program, and it was called the Alpha Effect. Strictly focused on 7-figure earning lawyers with families. And I built out a high ticket $25,000 a year program to basically be their concierge training service. Everything from, predominantly training and nutrition, but, on a 24/7 basis, revolving around travel, providing locations to eat, what to eat in certain, places they went for work, anything and everything to just try and be my mind in their life as it pertained to finding success in personal wellness. And from there, it was pretty demanding, and it kind of took, my passion with fitness was just from my personal health. That's where it came from. And this kind of directed it. And, I think everybody in that space finds out that they start putting so much effort into helping everyone else achieve those goals that they kind of forget about themselves. And quickly I realized I'm forgetting about myself, and it's kind of diminishing the way I felt about something I loved for a really long time that I think was foundationally who I was as an individual. And so I decided to stop that. And at that point in my life, I'm like, okay, I've done everything myself. I've always had an emotional attachment to product, and it made it hard to really sell it because I cared way too much about the feedback from people who didn't want to buy it. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm going to go be a part of an organization that's figured everything else out. That product isn't a question. I just need to help figure out strategy and sell it and help just, recognize revenue. And that led me to Thermo Fisher. And, I guess our conversation kind of before this podcast, I was involved with their specific IgE blood testing for allergy, respiratory allergy, food allergies, everything allergy related. And basically what I did there, I helped health systems recognize revenue utilizing that allergy test who would purchase the instrumentation it was ran on, and I would go and clinically educate and sell to the physicians to order that test. Thermo Fisher is an enormous organization. So at the end of the day, I went from, a bootstrapped entrepreneur pitching my own investors to a number on a piece of paper who ultimately, no matter how much success I found, didn't drive the business a whole lot. I operated in pretty much the state of Florida, predominantly Central Florida. So I went from having all of the impact to just a tiny piece of impact. And while, it's still significant, it wasn't as significant to me. And that led me away from Thermo Fisher to a similar organization, somewhat a competitor, Zeus Scientific in the diagnostic space still. Now I was working with infectious diseases and autoimmune diseases, selling capital equipment and the tests that went on that capital equipment. And my territory expanded to cover 9 states. And what was really cool is we were involved in COVID testing like right before it really got big. I remember being in Baptist Miami in like February of 2020 as COVID was kind of becoming a real thing, not understanding the impact that it was really about to have. And it was awesome because I got to be part of an antibody test product launch there where I found a lot of success in selling that. But ultimately at that point, I had been an entrepreneur, done everything myself. I had worked for a large organization. Now I'm working for a smaller organization. A couple of things happened in that smaller organization that kind of made me doubt their ability to navigate in the future. COVID was probably the largest infectious disease diagnostic opportunity we'll ever see in our lifetime, in my opinion. And I just didn't think the right decisions were made. And it aligned with a lot of my peers who actually ended up leaving as well. And thankfully, a friend of mine coincidentally reached out who knew I had a passion for healthcare technology and asked if I would be interested in coming to help a medical news publisher branch into the healthcare tech space. And that's what led me to where I am.
Sweet. It's like when I hear you talk about it and just knowing the journey already, like it's actually more linear than you might realize at the surface level. Like it all makes sense, that this intersection of healthcare and nutrition and science and sales and technology. Like everything you've done has those things in it. So it's really cool to hear you talk through it.
Awesome. Thank you. It's honestly cool to hear you say it, because in my head sometimes things seem a lot more scattered. So, sometimes I fail to realize those similarities and understand that I'm not all over the place.
Yeah, we have a lot of similarities between it. Obviously started in the same industry in a way, same major. So I was in fitness for 8 years, then transitioned into tech, but it was still adjacent, right? Because it was a fitness tech company.
Absolutely.
And now I'm kind of totally out of it, but it all served a purpose. So speaking of babies, you might hear my black lab crying in the background. She wants to go outside or something, but yeah, I wanted to dig a little deeper on Blueprint, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I do know a lot of listeners are either business owners or interested in starting their own business, and so I wanted to ask you, I guess, just to you've already talked about it a little bit, but can you talk about the highs and lows? What were the key outcomes? I know you had national distribution, which is really hard to do in that industry. I know it's competitive and a long process, but can you just talk about that experience?
Yeah, so I will say first and foremost, it was definitely a learning experience. I there are a couple of ways to go about entrepreneurship, and starting your organization, whether it's bootstrapped or you go on to like legit, VC funding or anything along those lines. As I kind of said the way it started, and I had a business partner, and we got to a point where we were getting some attention, kind of leveraging some social media influencers, our own social media, really focusing like on our geo to try and like create just a local demand to get into our local shops. And we originally had approached a very big brand in the space, I guess a distributor, so to speak. And at the time, conversations were kind of like, you have to build your brand. So that was our focus. And I think that is kind of, there are a lot of ways you can go, as I said. And I think building your brand is probably one of the best ways to go. I think companies who don't focus on building and maintaining a brand identity don't generate revenues for very long. And next to that is obviously building a community if you're direct to consumer. And so we started on that any which way we could, any way we could get our name to more people. We attended a lot of events, expos, had booths, utilized social hashtags, anything and everything we could to just get our name in front of more people. Eventually hitting a point where we kind of had to have a little more money than what we had. So we brought in an investor who was a silent partner, who helped to facilitate, a lot of growth, predominantly from a dollar perspective, simply allowing us to order more from the manufacturer we had identified. We'd gone through some manufacturing issues and had to switch manufacturers, but it allowed us to kind of, increase our order basis and reduce our cost per units, obviously increasing our margin and giving us a little more room. But ultimately going through it, like I said, it was such a learning experience. Every time I think about it, I think about anything and everything I would do differently. And I'm thankful things worked the way they did, because I learned so much, and it helped me with how many filters I have now on opportunities that present themselves. Because ultimately, my business partners and I kind of decided to go different directions and like vision for the company, which is what led to me selling, just because it became less of a passionate project for me, which is what it started as, and more of a I'm not going to say wasted effort, but that's kind of the way it felt.
Yeah.
So it's crazy because it becomes really difficult to answer your question in a clear and concise way. I think if I could say it in a way that provided value to anyone who wants to start an organization, is to plan, like to plan every possible scenario in your head, just so you're prepared to make decisions.
Yeah.
It's never going to work the way you plan, and everything's going to present itself that you never thought was possible, but you would have at least like thought out in some capacity what you would do in pressure situations.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, that's really the biggest piece of advice I can get. There were lots of highs and lows. Lows simply being, numbers being down and being bootstrapped and like, crap, how are we going to make, how are we going to get to the next level, or how are we going to get the next dollars in, or what do we have to do to move some product so that it's not sitting too long, or, pay rent at our warehouse. And, to highs being, I mean, just people traveling 12 hours when you host an event to come see you and see your brand, and travel 12 hours just to buy your products when they could buy them online. And also that brand we reached out to originally, the CEO is a very, very, very large, if not the largest name in like entrepreneurship motivation. And I saved a screenshot, I've got it somewhere, of when he sent me a Facebook message and was like, okay, we got to talk. Because it was like at that point we had done enough brand building to where people were coming into their stores asking if they carried our product.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the high was knowing that what we did was right. The low was just, and the time not knowing what we were doing was right.
Right. Do you want to say the name of this person? Do I know this person?
You might, Andy Frisella.
Oh yeah, it's a very big name.
Yeah. So Andy, and I had exited shortly after, and my business partner in the company went on to do some business with Andy. I don't know in what capacity, if they still do or not. I don't really stay up to date with what's happening, to be completely honest. But I remember the day like it was yesterday when Andy messaged. Unfortunately, I had already moved to Tampa. So my business partner and a bunch of guys went to their facilities at supplement superstores and kind of got to see around and, talk shopping about what was going to happen. But I just remember, ultimately that was the biggest win for me, knowing that like, we got on his radar.
Absolutely. Where's he at? St. Louis?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, he's I mean, honestly, outside of that, he's gone to like provide so much value to me in my life. And he has no idea, but just from a mental toughness standpoint. So
Right.
I'm super thankful that opportunity presented itself, but more so just super thankful that I know who Andy is, and that he's a freaking rock star.
Yeah, absolutely. I like him. I listen to some of his stuff. Definitely know who he is.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. I think in addition to the branding and community, there's also something to be said for like founder-led sales, like to have a founder who knows how to sell, and like it's fine, like you said, branding is important, but at some point you gotta like jump out of your design studio and pick up the phone and like start asking people to buy your stuff. I think that's crippling for a lot of people.
And no, it absolutely is. And I think it'll help me in the future, in some capacity, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, that like navigating that startup space, especially when you're not like, flush with money and have, equity backing. It's interesting. I mean, you really just, you figure it out. You find some trusted advisors, find some people that, don't necessarily have your best interests, but they understand how to have your business's best interests in mind, and they can help you make those decisions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, speaking of sales, I also wanted to ask this as we get closer to the end here. There's a cohort of Waymarker members who are interested in moving into sales, whether it's tech or healthcare, medical device, that kind of thing. So, what advice would you give someone who has started that? They want to move from whatever they're in now to a sales career. And what must they know as they're looking to enter that field?
Um, I would say it's awesome that they're thinking about it. B, I would say, if in any way possible, please reach out to me. I'll help in any capacity. I kind of 5 things come to mind, so I'm going to try to run through 5 things that I think may prove to be valuable. Sales itself has received a bad connotation
Yeah.
in the past, especially I think when people are trying to transition into sales. I would say don't listen to the negative opinions of others who have possibly tried sales and failed. Because they failed, which means they really just gave up too early. And B, sales has changed drastically over the years. So it's not ultimately that difficult. So that's number one. Number two, people buy from people they know, like, and trust. This is probably one of the most common statements you'll hear in sales. And I think it signifies the emphasis and just that relationships are key. I think it's important to expand your network, and you will find when you are expanding your network that it's not only going to prove to be beneficial in your professional life, but as well as your personal and social life. And that's going to be the case for years and years to come. The more people you know, the better, really. Mm-hmm. Number three, I think that this is possibly one of the most important. In my opinion, the most difficult piece of sales is simply organization. So I think it's imperative to establish an organized system or a process of some sort very early on. So as you start to obtain more leads, identify more opportunities, and your pipeline just thickens, you're not letting anything slip through the cracks. And I say that because while relationships are key, sales are made in follow-up, and not just a single follow-up, but I'm talking 7, 10, 12, 15 follow-ups. Mm-hmm. You're not going to be able to do that without an organized system in place. You physically can't. Our brains, we can know 150 people is like our brain, like mental capacity max.
Dunbar's number. It's like,
yeah. And you're not going to be able to know, person number 1 versus person number 72, who you followed up with twice versus 7 times. Mm-hmm. I think number 4, outside of that organized piece, is to be get very good at qualifying your leads, and then also very good in the discovery phase of your conversation. This is going to save you so much time and so many headaches in the future. If you can, discover your prospects' concerns, their needs, their problems, after you've qualified that they're actually a potential customer, I mean, that alone is going to save you tremendous time. And then number 5, listen to what your customer is saying. You should spend way more time listening than talking. And if you know your product and you believe that it can help your customer, you'll easily be valuable to them if you're listening to what they say. I think if you can be a trusted advisor who persistently follows up, I guarantee you're going to be a successful salesperson.
Perfect. I'm gonna transcribe what you just said and create a guide or something. That was perfect.
I mean, I could probably transcribe it.
Go ahead. That was great. I appreciate that. The last question I ask everyone, Chase, is, and this is by far my favorite thing to talk about, is what is the kindest thing someone has ever done for you at work, or just business related? It could be like giving you an opportunity, a job offer, anything like that.
I think every introduction someone makes, or anytime they think of me without me being in front of them, is a kind moment. But honestly, something stands out significantly beyond any of that. When we had my daughter, she came, 10 weeks early. This was a new experience for us. Very, very scary. Lived out of a hospital, worked out of a hospital for 2 months. And like my previous team, they were just there for me. And like, not like a, if you need anything, tell me, but just like for some, and I don't know what distinguished it, but like, I just genuinely felt like they cared. I felt like they were there for me. They were, concerned for my health, my wife's health, my daughter's health, making sure that if I needed any help with anything in work, that they would facilitate anything that I needed. And yeah, so the kindest thing work related, I think hands down, that just stands out is just, my team being there for me when I really needed it.
Yeah, thanks for answering that. I love at work, especially when people go above and beyond, like, the job description. They and like you said, not just let me know if you need anything. It's like, I'm not gonna wait for you to let me know. I'm just gonna go ahead and take action. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Well, Chase, I know we've got work to do outside of this podcast, so I'll end it here if that's cool with you. But I wanted to give you a chance to like let the audience members know where they can find more information about you, and I'll certainly link it up as well.
Yeah, I think, where I'm finding I'm spending a lot of my time, LinkedIn. Obviously, you can look me up, just my first and last name, Chase Isaacs, on LinkedIn, and you'll find me as I start to learn how to utilize the platform a little better for my personal and professional goals. And as I said before, if you're in sales, let's link up. I think two minds are better than one, no matter what the discussion is. And if you're looking to get into sales, please reach out. Whether it's practical or tactical advice I can provide or facilitate any introduction, I'm happy to do so. And yeah, I'm an open resource for anyone who needs me in any way possible. Any consultation for a business idea, I'll sign an NDA. Don't worry. Anything. Yeah, I'm here to help.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time. I know you're busy with family and work. And yeah, I just, uh, more than anything, just proud of what you've become and the direction that you're going. It's been awesome to watch your, not just your career, but your life unfold the way it has. And you definitely have a big fan in the Dro household. So
Well, I appreciate it, Jimmy. I think it's been at least a wild ride in my head, and I imagine it'll continue to be wild. Just as opportunity presents itself and the world continues to change. So
yeah.
Happy I got to be here and we got to have this conversation. I look forward to staying in touch and hopefully providing value in some capacity to the Waymarker community.
Absolutely. Hey, before I hit stop, I need to take a screenshot for our moms.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I think I got it. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, Chase. Thanks so much, man.
Absolutely. Take care, Jimmy.
You too. See ya.
Bye-bye.